Timothy, or Tim as his friends knew him, checked his phone when a message arrived from Candace, or Candy, his wife of 5 years. He'd just landed a major service contract with a large California-based company with national branches. He expected his boss, Jake Hudson, to be ecstatic, as this deal meant significant growth for his IT firm and a substantial raise for him. Maybe now, he thought, he and Candy could finally start their family. However, a nagging worry plagued him since their camping trip with Jake a little over a week ago. Candy had seemed distant and irritable since they returned. But there was more. After they got home, while emptying the laundry hamper, he'd noticed something odd in the crotch of her underwear. Picking it up, he saw a dried stain with a peculiar smell. Suddenly, it hit him, and his world felt like it was collapsing. He didn't know whose fluid it was, but he swore to find out. Knowing he had an upcoming West Coast trip, he contacted a lawyer to explore his options if Candy was indeed unfaithful. He knew it would mean the end of their marriage. "Are you positive your wife is cheating?" Ruby Hawkins asked. Ruby, a family law and divorce specialist, came recommended by a recently divorced friend. "Not completely," he admitted, "but I need to be sure. And if she is, I want a divorce." "Well," Ruby explained, "most divorces in this state are no fault. You could file on grounds of infidelity, but you'll need concrete proof, such as photographs or video." "Like what exactly?" Tim inquired. "Exactly," Ruby confirmed. "If you like, I can have an investigator tail her to confirm your suspicions." "Please do," Tim replied. "What can I expect with the divorce process? She makes about as much as I do with her teaching position." "There's a good chance we can avoid alimony," Ruby explained. "With no real estate or children, assets will likely be divided equally. Your retirement remains yours, and hers stays with her. If she is cheating, we'll use that as grounds and leverage any evidence we gather for a favorable outcome. I'll begin drafting the necessary documents, and we'll move forward once we have proof." "All right," Tim agreed. "Go ahead. I'll be gone for about 3 days, which I figure is when she might act." Ruby engaged her investigator, Marvin Johnson, who suggested Tim install a tracking app on Candy's phone. He also provided Tim with a device to record landline conversations and a small audio recorder to hide in Candy's purse. Tim hated resorting to these tactics, but he felt driven to discover the truth. There were other signs, too. Since the camping trip, Jake had been more arrogant and condescending, as though he knew something Tim didn't. During the week, Candy drove him to the airport, kissing him goodbye. He told her he'd call that night. After dinner, she replied nonchalantly and wished him a safe flight. On his first night away, as planned, he called Candy, only to be taken aback when she mentioned she was waitressing at a party Jake was throwing that evening. Apparently, there'd been an emergency. One of the scheduled waitresses got sick, and Jake asked her to fill in. Tim hadn't heard about this from Jake. Candy explained Jake offered her $150 for the night, which would be helpful since she wouldn't be returning to work for a couple of weeks. Tim knew classes were starting soon and understood she could use the extra cash, but he felt uneasy. He questioned her decision, to which she replied affirmatively, expressing her love for him before saying goodnight. After the call, a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. He called the investigator to update him on Candy's new job. "Just wanted to let you know, Candy's been asked to waitress at a party at Jake Hudson's house," Tim stated. Marvin confirmed they'd keep him updated, and Tim thanked him before disconnecting. The next day, Tim called Candy's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. He also tried the house phone, getting only the answering machine. Surely she didn't stay the night with Jake, he thought. However, his hope was shattered when he received an email from Marvin that afternoon. "Candy spent the night at Hudson's, and she's still there," the email read. "And she was quite busy last night. I've attached a couple of photos, but I want to warn you, they're pretty graphic. I'll give you my full report when you return." Tim opened the attachments, and his heart plummeted. There was his wife of 5 years engaged in explicit acts. One involved Jake, while the others involved colleagues he once considered friends. The second photo showed her sprawled on the floor. Tears streamed down his face, his hands shaking. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Timothy, Tim to his friends, tried calling her phone again, but it went directly to voicemail. He dialed the house phone again, reaching only the machine and leaving no message. He sought refuge in the hotel bar. The following morning, he checked the tracker, confirming Candy's phone was still at Jake's. Marvin corroborated this with an email containing more pictures, including a disturbing scene involving Jake, his son Mike, and others from Jake's IT firm. He had trusted them all, but not anymore. He didn't recognize the other three men. Concluding his business in California, contract in hand, Tim caught an early flight home. Arriving, he noticed Candy's car was gone. Checking the tracker, her phone remained at Jake's. Inside, he changed clothes and called Ruby's office. To his surprise, Ruby's receptionist told him she was free and could see him that afternoon. Tim called Candy's cell and was shocked when she answered, sounding breathless. He asked where she was, and she claimed to be home catching up. Stunned by her blatant lie, Tim informed her he was back in town and on his way home. Candy expressed excitement about his return and offered to pick him up at the airport. Tim declined, telling her not to bother, he'd grab a cab. After hanging up, he wondered if she noticed his lack of affection. Shaking his head, he left for Ruby's office. Candy stared at her phone after Tim hung up. His usual, "I love you," was missing, and his tone seemed off. She'd planned to leave after the first night, but the allure of being with Jake and his son Mike proved irresistible. She rationalized it as something she owed herself. She assumed it would end once classes resumed, and Tim would remain none the wiser. So, she spent the next day and night with Jake and Mike. While Jake was briefly at work the following day, Mike kept her occupied and even invited friends over for a group encounter. Upon Jake's return, she was in bed with Mike on Jake's bed when Jake joined them. Jake suggested sending Tim away more often. "I have classes starting soon," she explained, "so I won't be available on weekdays, and I can't risk it while Tim's home." "Why not?" Jake suggested. "Perhaps he'd enjoy seeing you with other men for a change." They chuckled at the thought. Admitting her growing feelings for Jake, she reiterated her love for Tim and her reluctance to hurt him. Jake proposed arranging for Tim's absence over weekends, allowing her to spend time with them. "But Tim will find out eventually," she voiced. "He's not oblivious." "Don't worry," Jake reassured her, reaching for his camera. "I'll handle him." "Just one condition," he added. "What's that?" she asked. "You won't be in bed with him anymore," Jake declared. "You're ours now. Got it?" "How do I manage that?" she questioned. "You'll think of something," Jake dismissed. "Use an excuse, like a headache." "I'll try," she acquiesced, unaware of the surveillance. They remained oblivious to the van across the street, with minicams documenting their every move. Tim's devastation upon seeing the evidence Marvin compiled was immense. In addition to photographs, there were videos showcasing her with multiple men, far beyond anything she'd ever done with him. His love for her evaporated as he processed her behavior. Ruby tried to comfort him, but his anguish persisted. How could she change so drastically after 5 years? What had he done to deserve this? And Jake, whom he'd once considered a friend, now revealed his true colors. "I'll initiate divorce proceedings," Ruby suggested, citing infidelity. "We could also file for alienation of affection against Jake and your colleagues. Although these cases are often difficult, I believe we can secure a favorable settlement." "Do whatever is necessary," Tim responded. "Just don't do anything reckless," Ruby cautioned. "I don't want to have to bail you out of jail." "I won't," Tim assured her. "When will the papers be ready?" "I'll have everything prepared in a couple of days," Ruby confirmed. "In the meantime, try to maintain normalcy with your wife." "I'm not a very good actor," Tim confessed. "I won't touch her again. Who knows what she's caught from all those men," Tim declared. "Tell her you're not feeling well," Ruby suggested. "That should buy you some time." Tim nodded in agreement. "Yeah, okay," he replied. "Thanks." Leaving Ruby's office, he felt somewhat relieved, but still nauseous. In his car, Tim realized he couldn't continue working for Jake or be around the men who betrayed him. He found the number he needed in his contacts and dialed, hoping for the best. "Carlson," the voice answered. "John, it's Tim Burns," Tim said. "Tim, how are you, my friend?" John asked. "Not great," Tim admitted. "Listen, is that position at Empire still available?" John Carlson had been trying to recruit Tim for a long time, but Tim's loyalty to Jake had prevented him from considering it. Now that loyalty was gone. Absolutely, John confirmed. Are you finally ready to join a respectable company? Something like that, Tim replied. I've realized I can't stay at my current job. I'm sorry to hear that, John sympathized. Is there anything I can do to help? Just give me a job, Tim requested. I'll work as hard for you as I did for Jake. Done, John agreed. How about starting Monday? Perfect, Tim accepted. Great. Why don't you and your wife join us for dinner tonight? Rose will make her famous lasagna, and we can discuss your compensation package, John proposed. I'd love to, but I can't bring candy, Tim declined. Oh, John inquired. What's wrong? I'd rather not discuss it over the phone, Tim said, but I can explain more tonight. Of course, John understood, sounding concerned. Rose is a counselor. Maybe she can help. That sounds good, Tim acknowledged. I'll let Rose know. Can you come by at 6:30? John asked. Absolutely, Tim confirmed. 6:30 it is then. Thanks, buddy. My pleasure, John replied. Feeling a weight lifted, Tim drove home, not finding Candy there. There, he showered, changed, and wrote his resignation letter. Candy arrived around 5 o'clock p.m. Noticing Tim at his computer, she leaned in for a kiss, but he turned, and she landed on his cheek. Is everything okay? She asked, surprised. Not really, Tim admitted. I'm not feeling well. Maybe it's jet lag. I'll sleep on the futon tonight. Sleeping out? She queried. Where are you going? I have dinner plans, Tim answered. Are you meeting someone? She asked, sounding concerned. Are you accusing me of cheating? Tim countered. No, I've never cheated on you and I never will. Can you say the same? She recoiled, horrified, doubting if he knew. He couldn't possibly know, she reassured herself. No, I can't, she replied. Tim remained unconvinced. So, how was your trip to California? She asked, attempting to change the subject. Successful, he replied. And how did your gig at Jake's house go? It went smoothly, she responded. Even though it was challenging, it was still enjoyable. I can imagine, he remarked, his voice flat. Glancing at his watch, he decided it was time to leave. I should get going, he informed her, saving his work and shutting down his computer. Standing up, he walked past her without a word and went into the bedroom to change. Upon his return, Candy was seated on the couch. How long will you be out? She inquired. I'm not sure, he replied. Don't wait up for me. Goodbye. Grabbing his keys, he exited the house. She couldn't help but notice he hadn't kissed her or said he loved her, as he always did when leaving. After watching his car pull away, she picked up the house phone and dialed Jake, unaware their conversation was being recorded. Jake, I think he suspects something, she confided. What makes you think that? Jake queried. He wouldn't touch me at all, she explained. He always gives me a kiss and says he loves me, but not today. He seemed distant and just left, mentioning a dinner appointment. Really? Jake responded. Did he mention with whom? No, he didn't, she admitted. Jake, what if he knows? What if he plans to leave me? Then so be it, Jake scoffed. You can always stay with us. And as for Timmy boy, I'll keep him busy enough that he won't be home much. But I don't want to lose him, Candy lamented. I love him. Yeah, your actions over the past couple of days really show that, don't they? Jake retorted. That's not fair, Jake, she protested. I know what I did with you guys, and yes, I enjoyed it, but I still love him. I don't want to lose him. Sure. Jake dismissed her concern. Let him cool off. Eventually he'll come around. And if he doesn't, well, we can handle that too. You're not going to hurt him, are you? She worried. Not explicitly, Jake assured her. We'll just need to make him see things our way, and you'll play a part in that. What? Candy was taken aback. That's right, Jake confirmed. When the time comes, you'll help us make him understand. Remember where your loyalty lies. And remember, I have videos that could cause quite a scandal if they were to surface. You wouldn't dare, Candy protested. Oh, I would, Jake asserted. I have footage from the camping trip and other compromising situations. You belong to me now, so it's up to you to keep Timmy boy in line. Feeling trapped, Candy reluctantly agreed. Okay, Jake, she conceded, but please don't hurt him. Jake smirked over the phone. Sure, he dismissed her concern, ending the call. Meanwhile, Tim arrived at the large two-story home where John and Rose Carlson resided. He exited his car, carrying the bottle of wine he'd picked up on the way. John greeted him at the door, graciously accepting the wine. Come on in, Tim. John welcomed him with a smile. And thank you. This will be put to good use tonight. Following John inside, Tim was introduced to Rose, who was waiting in the dining room with her lasagna. Tim, this is my wife, Rose, John introduced. Rose, meet Tim Burns, our new account representative. Tim shook Rose's hand as John opened the wine. Nice to meet you, Tim. Rose greeted him with a smile. The pleasure's mine, Mrs. Carlson, Tim replied. Please call me Rose, she insisted. Mrs. Carlson sounds too formal. Seated at the table, Rose served portions of lasagna while John poured the wine. Tim expressed his gratitude, acknowledging the delicious meal. This is the best lasagna I've ever had, he complimented. I'm pleased you enjoyed it, Rose remarked. It's one of my specialties. So, Tim, John inquired, I don't mean to pry, but I'm curious why you left Jake so abruptly. Did something happen? Tim nodded before elaborating. Yeah, something happened, he admitted. Please, Tim, share with us, Rose encouraged. Taking a moment to collect his thoughts, Tim recounted the events. That's tough, John sympathized. I can relate. I've been through something similar, though under different circumstances. What's your plan now, besides changing jobs? Rose asked. I've consulted a lawyer, and I'm filing for divorce, Tim revealed. My attorney says it'll likely be an even split. Have you considered counseling? Rose suggested. It's beyond that point, Tim responded. I don't understand what's gotten into Candy. It's like she underwent a sudden transformation into someone I don't recognize. How are you coping with all of this? Rose inquired. Not very well, Tim confessed. My lawyer advises me to act normally around Candy, but it's challenging. I can't even bear to look at her. Perhaps counseling could help, she suggested. I might consider it, Tim acknowledged. John is right. Rose is the best in the field, John interjected. There, he showered, changed, and finalized his resignation letter. Candy arrived around 5 o'clock p.m. Seeing Tim at his computer, she leaned in for a kiss, but he turned, and she kissed his cheek. Is everything okay? She asked, surprised. Not really, Tim admitted. I'm not feeling well. Maybe it's jet lag. I'll sleep on the futon tonight. Sleeping out? She questioned. Where are you going? I have dinner plans, Tim answered. Are you meeting someone? She asked, a note of concern in her voice. Are you accusing me of cheating? Tim countered. Because I haven't cheated on you. Can you say the same? She recoiled, horrified, wondering if he knew. He couldn't possibly know, she told herself. No, I can't, she replied. Tim remained unconvinced. So, how was your trip to California? She asked, trying to deflect. Successful, he replied. And how did your gig at Jake's house go? It went smoothly, she responded. Even though it was challenging, it was still enjoyable. I can imagine, he remarked, his voice devoid of emotion. Checking his watch, he decided it was time to go. I should get going, he said, saving his work and shutting down his computer. He stood and walked past her without a word, going to the bedroom to change. When he returned, Candy was sitting on the couch. How long will you be out? She inquired. I'm not sure, he replied. Don't wait up for me. Goodbye. He grabbed his keys and left the apartment. She noted that he hadn't kissed her or said he loved her, as he always did when he left. After she heard his car drive away, she picked up the phone and dialed Jake, unaware their conversation was being recorded. Jake, I think he suspects something, she confided. What makes you think that? Jake asked. He wouldn't touch me at all, she explained. He always kisses me and says he loves me, but not today. He seemed distant and just left, saying he had a dinner appointment. Really? Jake responded. Did he say who with? No, she admitted. Jake, what if he knows? What if he's going to leave me? Then so be it, Jake scoffed. You can always stay with us. And as for Timmy boy, I'll keep him busy enough that he won't be home much. But I don't want to lose him, Candy pleaded. I love him. Yeah, your actions over the past couple of days really demonstrate that, don't they? Jake retorted sarcastically. That's not fair, Jake, she protested. I know what I did with you and Mike, and yes, I enjoyed it, but I still love Tim. I don't want to lose him. Sure, Jake dismissed her concern. Let him cool off. He'll come around. And if he doesn't, well, we can handle that too. You're not going to hurt him, are you? She worried. Not physically, Jake assured her. We'll just need to make him see things our way, and you'll help us with that. What? Candy was startled. That's right, Jake confirmed. When the time comes, you'll help us make him understand. Remember where your loyalty lies. And remember, I have videos that could cause quite a scandal. You wouldn't dare, Candy challenged. Oh, I would, Jake asserted. I have footage from the camping trip and other compromising situations. You belong to us now, so it's up to you to keep Timmy boy in line. Feeling trapped, Candy reluctantly agreed. Okay, Jake, she conceded, but please don't hurt him. Jake smirked. Sure, he said dismissively, ending the call. Meanwhile, Tim arrived at John and Rose Carlson's home. He got out of his car carrying the bottle of wine he'd purchased. John greeted him at the door, accepting the wine. "Come on in, Tim," John welcomed him, smiling. "Thank you. We'll enjoy this tonight." Inside, Tim met Rose, who was in the dining room with her lasagna. "Tim, this is my wife, Rose," John said. "Rose, meet Tim Burns, our new account representative." Tim shook Rose's hand as John opened the wine. "Nice to meet you, Tim," Rose greeted him warmly. "The pleasure's mine, Mrs. Carlson," Tim replied. "Please call me Rose," she insisted. "Mrs. Carlson is too formal." At the table, Rose served the lasagna, and John poured the wine. Tim expressed his appreciation for the delicious meal. "This is the best lasagna I've ever tasted," he complimented. "I'm glad you like it," Rose said. "It's one of my specialties." "So, Tim," John began, "I don't mean to pry, but I'm curious why you left Jake so suddenly. Did something happen?" Tim nodded. "Yeah, something happened," he admitted. "Please tell us," Rose encouraged. Taking a moment, Tim recounted the events. "That's awful," John sympathized. "I've been through something similar, although the circumstances were different." "What are your plans now besides the new job?" Rose asked. "I've hired a lawyer, and I'm filing for divorce," Tim revealed. "My lawyer says it'll probably be a 50-50 split." "Have you thought about counseling?" Rose suggested. "It's past that point," Tim responded. "I don't understand what's gotten into Candy. It's like she's become a completely different person." "How are you handling all of this?" Rose inquired. "Not very well," Tim admitted. "My lawyer told me to act normally around Candy, but it's hard. I can't even stand to look at her." "Maybe counseling could help," Rose suggested again. "I might consider it," Tim acknowledged. "John's right. Rose is the best in the business," John said. "I think she could really help you, if you're open to it. Plus, it's covered under your benefits package." "That's a plus," Tim chuckled. "I'm serious," John insisted. "Rose was invaluable to me during a difficult time. I'm sure she can be a great support for you, too." Turning to Rose, he asked, "Can you fit him into your schedule?" "Absolutely," she confirmed. "I'd suggest an hour a week. How does that sound, Tim?" After a moment, Tim agreed. "All right, I'll give it a try." John smiled and patted Tim's shoulder. "Good decision," he praised. "I'll make sure you have the time for your sessions. Coordinate with Rose, and let me know what you arrange." "I will," Tim affirmed. "Thank you." "Now, if you don't mind, dear, Tim and I will go to my office to discuss his new position," John announced. "Of course not," Rose replied, smiling. "I'm looking forward to working with you, Tim." "Thank you," Tim said as he stood with John. They went to John's home office, where he poured them each a snifter of brandy. Over the next 2 hours, they discussed the details of Tim's new role. By the end of their conversation, Tim felt empowered, like he was taking back control of his life. After shaking hands with John, Tim drove home. It was around 10 p.m. when he pulled into his driveway. Noticing the lights were on, he hoped Candy was alone. Entering the apartment, he found her on the couch. "How did your meeting go?" she inquired. "Very well, thank you," he replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to bed. Good night." He retreated to the second bedroom, where his computer was, and began undressing. "Are you sleeping in here now?" Candy asked from the doorway. "Yes," Tim confirmed. "I'm still not feeling well, so I'll sleep on the futon. Is that all right?" Sure, I suppose," she responded. "It's just that you've been away for 3 days, and I was hoping we could, spend some time together." "I'm not feeling up to it tonight," Tim stated. In truth, the thought of being intimate with her made him uncomfortable. "Okay," she murmured softly. "Maybe tomorrow?" "I'm not sure," he replied. "We'll see." She nodded and turned away, wondering if he knew anything about her recent activities. The next morning, Tim woke before Candy, prepared his resignation letter, and made coffee. Seeing Candy's purse on the counter, he retrieved the audio recorder and downloaded the previous day's phone conversation. He left the apartment without saying goodbye or expressing any affection for Candy. As he left, Candy heard the door close and lay in bed, tears streaming down her face. Arriving at the office, Tim kept to himself. After exchanging greetings with his secretary, he went to his office and closed the door. While packing his belongings, Jake entered. "What's this?" Jake demanded. Tim reached into his briefcase and pulled out 2 envelopes. "One is the signed contract from California," he explained. "The other is my resignation, effective immediately. I expect a bonus for securing the California account and my final paycheck, including my remaining vacation time." "Resignation?" Jake exclaimed, taken aback. "Why are you leaving? I need you." "Seriously?" Tim retorted. "You honestly don't know why? You think I'm naive?" "I'm not. Frankly, certain revelations have come to light that necessitate my resignation. I've secured a position with another company. I'll be leaving here shortly and then heading to HR. Wait, Tim, can't we discuss this? Jake implored. Tim shook his head. There's nothing to discuss, Jake. I'm done. Finished. I once considered you a friend, but you betrayed me and ruined my marriage. Find someone else to deceive. So this is about that? Jake probed. Just so you know, your wife willingly engaged in intimacy with me. We don't need to let this ruin your career. Just go with the flow for now. Let Candy explore her desires. When she's done, she'll come back to you. You're despicable, aren't you? Tim accused. You expect me to accept that? By the way, how long have you been involved with her? The first time was during the camping trip, Jake confessed. On the second day, while you and the others were skiing, she initiated it in your tent, claimed I was superior to you. Then she begged me to sleep with her. Remember when you suddenly sent me away to handle something at the office? You wanted me out of the way so I could be with your wife. Tim realized he was right. Yeah, so what? Jake shrugged. But Tim wasn't finished. And hiring her as a waitress at your party was just another ploy to sleep with her, right? Correct. So what? Jake reiterated. Tim stopped the audio recording he'd secretly started when Jake entered. Thank you for your confession, Tim declared. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm finished packing. I'll be heading to HR, and then I'm out of here. Wait, Jake protested. You can't use that recording. We'll see, Tim remarked. I'm leaving. Goodbye, Jake. Rotten hell. Wait, you forgot something, Jake said, holding up a framed photo of Candy from Tim's desk. I didn't forget, Tim replied. I don't want it. If you and your son are so enamored with her, she's all yours. I'm done with both of you. Goodbye. With that, he walked out, leaving Jake bewildered. How did Tim find out? Jake wondered. What do you mean he resigned? Candy demanded when Jake called her. He handed me a signed contract and a resignation letter and left, Jake explained. He knows, Candy. I don't know how, but he knows. What did you tell him? She inquired. The truth, Jake admitted. I told him about the first time on the camping trip. You fool, Candy exclaimed. You told him everything? She shrieked. Yes, Jake admitted. I even left the photo of you he had on his desk. Great, she sighed, tears rolling down her cheeks. What now? Not my concern, Jake shrugged. He's your husband. Handle it, unless you want me to come over and enlighten him further. No, she refused. You've done enough, thank you. Stay out of it. I'll handle it, or not. Whatever, Jake said dismissively, ending the call. Candy stared at her phone, tears streaming down her face. She dreaded the thought of divorce, but she understood Tim's position. Determined to salvage their marriage, she sank onto the couch, sobbing. A few minutes later, Tim arrived home. Spotting Candy's car, he looked for Jake's vehicle, but it wasn't there. Carrying his box and briefcase, he entered the apartment. He noticed Candy on the couch, but didn't speak as he went into his office. Locking the door, he checked for voice recordings, found the one of Candy's conversation with Jake, and immediately forwarded it to Ruby. Hello, Tim, she greeted when he called. I've just received your latest email. I'm filing your paperwork now. Good, Tim replied. When can they be served? If you'd like, I can arrange for them to be delivered late this afternoon, she offered. Will that work? It will. Thanks, he acknowledged, hanging up. He retrieved his .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol from the gun safe, more as a precaution than with any intent. In the kitchen, he placed it on the table. We need to talk, he stated, setting the pistol within easy reach. Is that necessary? She asked, pointing at the weapon. I hope not, he replied. Just a precaution in case your lover decides to show up. My lover? She questioned. Don't play coy, he retorted sternly. Sit down. We have things to discuss. Terrified and unsure of his intentions, she obeyed. Firstly, Tim began, someone will be serving you with papers later today. Divorce papers. Candy gasped. Why? I don't want a divorce. I love you. Bullshit, Tim countered. I know about you and Jake, his son, and the others you've been with recently. I'm filing for divorce on grounds of infidelity. Infidelity? She objected. You have no proof. Tim smirked, revealing an envelope containing time-stamped photos of her with multiple men, including Jake. I also have video and audio, he added. She shook her head, realizing it was futile. Good, he said. Given the circumstances, I've been more than fair. No alimony. Half the bank funds, split. We each keep our retirement accounts, and you keep your personal belongings. I've canceled your credit card and have a check here for your share. There's also a restraining order requiring you to stay 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. You have until you're served to pack." "You're kicking me out?" she whimpered, tears flowing. "Essentially," Tim confirmed. "What if I contest?" she ventured. Tim chuckled. "Not wise," he cautioned. "Think of the consequences if these photos came to light. Think about your job." "You wouldn't dare," she protested. "Want to bet?" Tim challenged. Candy hesitated, then admitted defeat. "No," she conceded. "I can't risk it. I need my job." "Exactly," Tim affirmed. "Two more things." "What?" she asked despondently. "You'll return your rings and drop my last name," he demanded. "You've become heartless," she accused, removing her rings. "You gave me cause," Tim responded. "I just want to know one thing. What changed? You went from a loving, faithful wife to this." She looked down before speaking. "It happened the second day of the camping trip," she recounted. "You were out on the boat, and I was in the tent. Jake came by and saw me. I had undressed and was lying there trying to rest when he walked in. He seemed embarrassed at first, seeing me undressed. We started talking, and then he exposed himself. And that was it. So, some guy with a bigger dick than mine drops his pants, and you're on it like white on rice," Tim remarked bitterly. "And that's all it took for you to become a cheating whore? How many times did you sleep with him on that trip?" "Twice," she admitted. "The first time when you were out water skiing, and the second time when Jake sent you back to the office." Tim shook his head and gestured at the photos. "I see that none of your lovers used any protection," he observed. "Weren't you worried about getting pregnant or catching something?" "I'm still on the pill," she defended. "That doesn't eliminate the risks," Tim pointed out. "You could still get pregnant or contract an STD. Was that what you were aiming for?" "Oh, God, no," she insisted. Tim shook his head. "You know, in all the time we've been together, I've been hit on by a lot of women who look a lot better than you," he confessed. "I turned them all down. I believed I had a loving and faithful wife at home, whom I would never betray. But you didn't even consider the consequences. You didn't care about my feelings. All you wanted was pleasure. I hope it was worth it to you. Now pack your things. I expect you gone by the time you're served." "Tim, please," she pleaded. "Can't we get some counseling? Please. I'll never do it again, I promise. Can't you forgive me? Just this once?" "I will never forgive you for what you've done," Tim declared, his expression harder than she had ever seen. "From the moment Jake dropped his trousers, you willingly betrayed me, and I can never forgive that level of betrayal." "But don't you love me enough to work through this?" she asked desperately. He shook his head. "No. Right now I can't even look at you. The sooner you're gone, the better." He was out of her life, for the better. "Now start packing. Whatever you leave behind will be disposed of," Tim declared, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Sobbing, Candy rose and headed to the master bedroom to gather her belongings. Tim watched as she emerged with bags overflowing with her possessions. She paused, looking at him with pleading eyes. "Can you at least help me take these to my car?" she asked softly. "Nope," Tim responded flatly. "You're on your own. And remember, anything left will be discarded or donated." Candy lugged the bags to her car and returned for more. Exhausted, she sighed. "I can't fit anything else." "Can I come back for the rest later?" she inquired hopefully. "No," Tim reiterated firmly. "You won't be allowed back. Ask your parents to collect your belongings, or I can hold off disposal for a few days." Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that," she acknowledged gratefully. "Oh my God," she suddenly exclaimed. "I just thought, what will I tell my parents?" "Try the truth for a change," Tim suggested dryly. "Tell them you cheated on me with my boss and others, and I had to ask you to leave." "Seriously?" she questioned, incredulous. "They'll disapprove regardless," Tim asserted. "But it'll be worse if you lie or sugarcoat it. You know how they feel about dishonesty." Just then, a knock echoed at the door. "I believe that's for you," Tim remarked. Candy cautiously opened the door to find a sheriff's deputy. "Are you Candace Burns?" he inquired. "Yes, that's me," she affirmed. "May I see some ID, please?" he requested. She produced her driver's license, and after verifying it, he returned it and handed her an envelope. "You've been served, ma'am," he informed her. "Additionally, there's a restraining order mandating you to vacate the premises immediately. You can sign the divorce papers now if you wish." Candy nodded and retrieved the divorce documents. After reviewing them, she requested a pen and signed. "I'll deliver this to the attorney," the deputy assured her. "You need to leave now. If you attempt to return, you'll be arrested. Do you understand?" "Yes," she replied, tears streaming down her face. She glanced back at Tim. "I'm deeply sorry," she apologized. "Yeah, me too," Tim responded. "Goodbye," she whispered as she departed. The deputy nodded at Tim before leaving as well. The following days were chaotic. Candy made no attempts to contact him, but Jake left 2 threatening voicemails on the house phone. "Damn it, Tim! I know you're there!" he yelled. "If you don't drop this lawsuit, I'm coming to kick your ass." Tim smirked, saved the voicemail, and forwarded it to Ruby, who notified the local sheriff's department. Candy's parents also called, asking if they could retrieve more of her belongings. "Sure," Tim replied. "Just make sure she's not with you. There's a restraining order against her." "Okay, George," Candy's father sighed. When George and Candy's mother arrived, they collected her remaining items and urged Tim to reconsider the divorce. "Tim, she made a mistake. Can't you forgive her and take her back?" "She loves you," Candy's mother pleaded. "What did she tell you, Bernice?" Tim inquired. "She admitted to messing up with your boss," Bernice replied. "And that's all?" Tim pressed. "Yes," Bernice explained. "She didn't go into details and we didn't pry." Tim retrieved the envelope containing the photos and SD cards and showed them to Bernice and George. They were appalled by what they saw. "I had no idea it was this bad." "I'm sorry, Tim." "I don't blame you," Bernice expressed. George's anger was evident. "I'm going to have a serious talk with our daughter," he vowed. "Have you done anything else with these photos?" he asked Tim. Tim shook his head. "Not yet, but I warned her not to contest the divorce," he disclosed. They sympathized with him before finishing packing Candy's belongings. 30 minutes later, they bid Tim farewell with a warm hug and departed. Later that day, as Tim watched TV, another knock sounded at the door. Glancing through the peephole, he saw Jake, Mike, and 2 former colleagues. He retrieved his pistol from the weapon case, called emergency services, and held the weapon behind his back, barely opening the door before they barged in. He confronted them with the firearm. "We're going to smack you up," Jake threatened. Tim pointed the weapon at Jake, causing them to pause. "You really want to test me?" Tim challenged. "Just so you know, I've already called emergency services, and the police are on their way. If you're here when they arrive, you'll be arrested for violating the restraining order," Tim warned. "Jake, he's serious," one of the men cautioned. Jake hesitated, then turned to Tim. Suddenly, they heard a siren nearby and saw flashing red and blue lights. "Yes, Jake, I mean it," Tim affirmed as they turned to depart. 2 imposing uniformed police officers appeared at the door. Tim lowered his pistol. "Please, sir, put the weapon down," one officer instructed. Tim complied, placing the pistol on the kitchen counter. "Sir, these individuals are violating a restraining order," Tim explained. "They forcibly entered my apartment and issued threats. I request their arrest." "Do you have a copy of the order?" inquired the other officer. Tim nodded. "Yes, officer, I do," he replied, retrieving an envelope from the counter and handing it to the officer, who carefully examined the document. After a brief inspection, the officer returned the order to Tim and turned to the 4 men. "Turn around. Hands behind your back," the officer ordered. The men glared at Tim as the officers handcuffed them and read them their rights. Once restrained, one officer addressed Tim. "Do you possess a license for that firearm?" he inquired. "Yes, I do," Tim confirmed. "Would you like to see it?" He then displayed his wallet, revealing his firearm license and NRA firearms training card. The officer nodded after inspecting the cards. "All right," he acknowledged. "Just be cautious with that weapon, understand?" "I understand, officer." "Thank you," Tim acknowledged. The following 3 months passed swiftly. Tim found greater satisfaction working at Empire than he ever had under Jake's management. Weekly counseling sessions with Rose aided him in managing his trust and anger issues. He joined a gym, exercising 3 days a week, and enrolled in martial arts classes, primarily for mental discipline. He also adopted a diet and exercise regimen recommended by Rose. The divorce proceeded smoothly, especially since Candy didn't contest it However, the alienation of affection lawsuits encountered some complications. While 2 were dismissed, as Ruby had warned, the case against Jake took an unexpected turn. After reviewing the evidence and financial disclosures, the judge ruled in Tim's favor, ordering Jake to pay $1 million in restitution. "Mr. Hudson, your conduct in this matter is utterly reprehensible," the judge admonished. "Not only did you exploit a man who considered you a friend, but you also abused your authority as his employer to deliberately ruin his marriage and family. Moreover, you repeatedly violated the restraining order against you. Therefore, I rule in favor of the plaintiff and order you to pay restitution in the amount of $1 million. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular," Jake's lawyer interjected. "Mr. Winthrop, this court finds Mr. Hudson's behavior not only irregular, but absolutely despicable." "The order stands," the judge affirmed. "When must this restitution be paid?" Winthrop inquired. "Immediately," the judge declared, "unless, of course, your client prefers spending time in jail for contempt." "No, Your Honor, my client will comply with the order," Winthrop conceded. "Very well," the judge concluded, "and may God help you if this check bounces. Case closed." With a gavel strike, the hearing concluded. Jake wrote a check, which his attorney passed to the bailiff. After the judge acknowledged the check, it was passed to Ruby, who then handed it to Tim. To Tim's surprise, the check cleared, and he compensated Ruby her portion of the judgment. While employed at Empire, Tim was approached by several of Jake's clients. Word of the lawsuit had spread, and numerous businesses were hesitant to engage with someone who actively sought to wreck another man's marriage. They viewed such behavior as indicative of a lack of trustworthiness. Tim speculated that at the current rate, Jake would likely be out of business within a year. Throughout this period, Tim declined to date, despite being approached by several pleasant women at work. He considered himself married until the final decree was granted. Only then would he entertain the idea of pursuing a relationship. Upon receiving the final decree, Tim celebrated with colleagues, including a lap dance from a generously endowed stripper. A couple of months after the divorce was finalized, Candy's mother called. "Tim, it's Bernice. Can we talk for a few minutes?" she asked. "Of course, Bernice," he responded. "What's on your mind?" "It's about Candy," she revealed. "She's tested positive for HIV. "I'm sorry to hear that, Bernice," Tim sympathized. "But honestly, I'm not surprised. Besides, we're officially divorced now, so there's little I can do. She's not covered by my insurance, and I'm not responsible for her." "I understand," Bernice acknowledged. "I was hoping you could spare a few minutes to talk to her." "I suppose I can, though I'm unsure of its benefit," he conceded. "Thank you so much," Bernice expressed her gratitude. Tim drove to Bernice and George's residence and was taken aback by Candy's gaunt appearance. She approached him, but he gestured for her to remain seated. With a heavy heart, she complied. He sat on the couch. "You're looking well, Tim," she remarked. "Better than I remembered. How have things been for you?" "Not great at all," she confessed. "You know about my HIV status." "That's what your mother informed me," he confirmed. "I'm sorry to hear that, but frankly, I'm not surprised." "Do you know when you contracted it?" he inquired. "I believe it was during one of my encounters at Jake's," she admitted. "I engaged in unprotected sex with multiple partners that day." "Does Jake know?" Tim questioned. She shook her head. "Not yet," she admitted, "but I have to inform him so he can get tested. I doubt he'll take it well." "No, probably not," Tim agreed. "Listen, Tim, I want to apologize to you one last time. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me for what I've done to you. I now realize the devastation my actions caused. I could have declined at any point, but I didn't. I was foolish and selfish, allowing my desires to override my better judgment. And now I'm facing the consequences. You were the best husband and lover I could have asked for, and I squandered it all for fleeting pleasure. I know you despise me, and you have every right to, but I don't want to depart this world without your forgiveness." Tim pondered her words carefully. It was the first time she had taken ownership of her actions and acknowledged their impact on others. Though he could continue holding a grudge, he remembered his sessions with Rose. Grudges wouldn't help him move forward. With a nod, he responded. "All right, Candy," he said. I forgive you." She burst into tears, huddled in her chair. Tim considered embracing her but refrained when she waved him away. "Thank you so much, Tim," she said, tears welling in her eyes. That means more to me than you know. Listen, I want you to find a woman you can love and trust. Marry her and have children with her. I'm done. I'm finished. But you have your whole life ahead of you, and you deserve to be happy. Thank you, he replied. I'll do that. And if you ever want to just talk, let me know, okay? She nodded, wiping away her tears. I will, Tim, she assured him. Thank you for coming over and talking with me. I've missed you so much these last few months. I've missed the woman I married, Tim said calmly. How are things with Jake and Mike, by the way? She shook her head. Not good, she admitted. He's gotten very abusive lately. He didn't take losing to you in court very well. You probably know his business has taken quite a hit lately. I've noticed, Tim acknowledged. Has he hurt you physically? Not yet, but he's very volatile, she replied. Do you want me to be with you when you tell him about your diagnosis? Tim offered. No, but thanks for asking anyway, she declined. This is my responsibility, and I need to handle it. You know, I keep thinking that if I had just told him to leave that first day at the camping trip, we'd still be together. That's quite possible, Tim conceded, but I have a feeling it would have happened at some point anyway. He'd been after you for quite a while. I think you're right, she agreed. Listen, I'm getting really tired and I need to rest. Thank you again for coming over. It really does mean more to me than you know. You're welcome, Candy, he said. And remember, call me if you just want to talk or something, okay? She weakly nodded. I will, she promised. Goodbye, she added. Think of me every once in a while, okay? He sensed a hint of finality in her words and wondered if she was contemplating self-destruction. I will, he assured her. Just don't do anything foolish, okay? She managed to smile. I won't, she assured him, as he stood and headed for the door. Bernice approached him. Thank you, Tim, she said, embracing him. This means more to her than you know, and to me as well. You're welcome, Bernice, he replied. Keep an eye on her, okay? I will, Bernice promised. A couple of weeks later, Tim was seated on his couch, having dinner and watching the evening news, when a report caught his attention. The bodies of a local businessman, his son, and a woman believed to be the man's lover were found earlier today in what police believe was a double homicide and suicide, the anchor reported. Jacob Hudson, president and founder of Hudson Consulting, along with his son and an unidentified woman, were discovered dead. All three suffered gunshot wounds. Police are investigating the incident, and further details will be provided as they become available. After overcoming his initial shock, Tim phoned Bernice. She answered the call in tears. Bernice, what's happening? He inquired. We just learned that Candy is dead, she replied. It appears that Jake shot her, then his own son, and himself. Oh my God, Tim exclaimed. I saw a report on the news and was hoping it wasn't her. I'm so sorry. It's her, Bernice confirmed. Do the police have any idea why it happened? Tim inquired. They're not entirely certain, she explained, but I believe she told Jake about her HIV diagnosis, and he snapped. Autopsies are underway. I'm truly sorry, Bernice, Tim expressed. I want you to know I never wished for this. I understand, Tim, she responded. Candy made her own choices and faced the consequences. Nonetheless, losing an only child is devastating. I take comfort in thinking she's in a better place now. Well, if there's anything I can do, please let me know, he offered. Thank you, Tim, she acknowledged. Candy's memorial service occurred a couple of weeks later, and Tim took time off to support her parents. According to the autopsies, both Jake and Mike were HIV positive, like Candy. Based on police findings, Candy disclosed her diagnosis to Jake, suggesting they get tested. Upon discovering they were also positive, Jake fatally shot her, then his son, and ultimately himself. Tim mourned Candy's passing for a few days, reminiscing about their happier times together. Then, unexpectedly, Cynthia Stone, another colleague, visited him. Hey, cowboy, she greeted. Want to join us for happy hour tonight? You seem like you could use some company. Tim hesitated briefly, almost declining, but reconsidered. What the heck, he responded. I could use some good company right now. Sure, count me in. Great. Then meet us at the hitching post after work, okay? She suggested, smiling. I'll be there, he confirmed. Thanks for the invitation. As she walked away, he contemplated the cycle of life. Then he heard a familiar female voice in his mind. Go for it, big boy. She's into you, the voice suggested, surprising him. He scanned the surroundings but found no one. A shiver ran down his spine momentarily. No, he thought to himself, that can't be possible. Or can it?